Today I messed up by swiping on my girlfriend's phone. So this happened a few days ago and I'm still not sure I'm 100% ready to tell the story, but here goes. I've been with my girlfriend for about a year and I already know she is the love of my life. She's perfect for me. We're perfect for each other. We're getting ready to move in with each other and I want nothing more than to start a family with her and spend the rest of my life with her. We went on a short vacation last week and when we returned she gave me her phone to look at some photos from the trip. She went to the bathroom while I had her phone, and as I was scrolling through the pictures it kind of jumped to a period that was about a year and a half ago. If you have an iPhone you know what I'm talking about, you scroll a little bit too fast and all of a sudden you're back at the start of the photo album. It's annoying as hell. But some photos caught my eye. Some photos that I really shouldn't be seeing, of her and a previous boyfriend. There she is, the love of my life, trying to get her mouth around the biggest penis I've ever seen in my life. I've watched P a lot. I've never seen a D like this. I'm talking bigger than 2 Coke cans stacked on top of each other. Longer and thicker. As far as I could tell she was unable to get her teeth around it. I could see another thumbnail of her comparing the size of his D to her forearm with a look of wonder and glee on her face. I closed the pictures and I've acted like nothing has happened, but I cannot get these images out of my mind. I've never been self-conscious about my D size. In fact, if you believe the stats, I'm significantly above average, but this has destroyed my self-esteem. We haven't had S since. I can't concentrate on my work. I just wish I had never seen those damn pictures. Today I messed up by banging my first cousin. So, didn't happen today, but last weekend. Finally getting around to really processing it all and I guess trying to deal with it. Went out for drinks with my girlfriend and met up with my younger cousin at the bar. We'd all hung out once before and had a great time. My cousin invited a couple of her friends to the bar too. We did some bar hopping. I got drunk pretty unintentionally. The last bar was, I swear, not putting any mixers in my cocktails, they were straight alcohol. So anyway, we're about to leave and my cousin's friends are trying to get her home, because she's drunk too. Well, my GF was our DD, so we offered to let her stay in our spare room. Everyone was cool with that because who's safer than family, right? Wrong. We get home and, I had to piece together some of this later because I blacked out for most of it. Apparently initially everything was cool. My cousin went to the spare room and my GF got her situated. The problem started a little later when I, in my infinite wisdom, decided to walk straight out of my bedroom with my girlfriend in it, and into my cousin's room. I don't particularly remember much except for 2 details which I guess are not important to the story. Well, okay, so one might be. I remember her giving me a very enthusiastic BJ, which, as you can imagine, makes a lot of noise. Apparently after a while my GF came out of the room wondering where I was because I just disappeared. She didn't barge into the room or anything, but she heard the noises, which is pretty obvious. So at that point, she left. She left me, and I don't blame her. Anyway, that means I wake up the next morning, having blacked out, oblivious that my GF was gone already, but I'm fucking naked next to my naked cousin. There's C all over the bed where her face was. She didn't even sleep with a pillow. There's obviously no hiding this, but I'm still half drunk and I went to try to go sneak back into my room, which I found empty. So yeah. I haven't heard from my GF all week, and I'm sure we're done, and I don't blame her. All I can hope for now is that this shit doesn't get out to my family, because I would probably implode. No, my cousin and I are not going to start hooking up regularly. It's actually super awkward and she has hardly said a word to me either. Again, I don't blame her. TIFU by defining a word for my son. Once a week, usually Friday nights, but we had to move it to tonight this week. My husband and I have a nice date night. Sometimes we go out and either have one of our sets of parents or a babysitter watch them. Sometimes we just have a very romantic dinner at home after the kids go to bed. Tonight, my husband and I have a date night of the latter variety planned. My husband wanted to surprise me with what dinner would be tonight, so he got the groceries by himself. While he was out today shopping for all of the elements of our dinner, I was with the kids at home and doing the laundry. Our kids were all in the living room, with the younger two playing and our oldest, who's 10, watching a cooking show while he was weaving a potholder. At one point, the presenter of the show mentioned that oysters, which were in the recipe, were aphrodisiacs. My son immediately asked me what that meant, and I told him that it's a food that's supposed to make you want to have sex. He said gross, then carried on watching. When my husband came home with the groceries, he called the kids over to help him put them away. After a minute of putting things away, our oldest son yelled, "Ew." My husband then laughed and asked what was wrong, and our son said, "I know what oysters are for, Dad," in the most disappointed tone I've ever heard him use to speak. He's been shooting both of us the most withering looks you can imagine from a 10-year-old all afternoon. I think he's not enjoying the day too much. Today I messed up by laying my head on my boyfriend's lap. Last night my boyfriend and I were watching a movie on the couch and we were both pretty tired. I was laying across the couch with my head on his lap. Sometime during the movie I ended up knocking out. I was woken up by the foulest thing I've ever smelled. The fart itself was pretty quiet, but it was almost like the smell came first then the sound. Sometimes I sleep with my mouth open, allergies, and I tasted it in my mouth somehow. I shot right up and started coughing. I went to yell at my boyfriend for ripping ass right near my face, and he turns out he was knocked out too. He definitely heard about this in detail once he woke up. I learned my lesson about sleeping on his lap. All trust has been broken, and my eyes still sting a little. Yes, I blame him even though he was asleep, because why did it have to stink so bad? My foo was putting my life in his hands. Today I messed up by wearing a shawl, which ruined my relationship with my GF. Minor background, I am a pretty affectionate, and at times, effeminate, dude. I'm 6 feet 2 inches and have a pretty, tough guy background in that I was in special forces a while ago, and my roommates all served as well, but I also have thin wrists and sit on my friends' laps and blow kisses to them and shit. I'm not gay, I just am me. So while I was in a shop with a roommate a few weeks ago, he saw these really cool shawls that we both couldn't get out of our heads. He returned last weekend to buy them and now we have these shawls. Mine makes me look like a Star Wars character and his looks like the outlaw Josie Wales. These are seriously awesome shawls. The first night we wore them, everybody at the dive bar we went to, dudes, thought they were awesome as well. Then this girl and her friend arrive on invite from Shawlbro, and they are seriously turned off by our sweet shawls. Like, acting pretty weird about them and making comments. Whatever. So I get a call from my GF, she's tired and wants to hang out at mine, and so I bid these mean girls and Shawlbro adieu and head home. I'm still wearing the shawl when my GF arrives and she's also really taken aback. She won't even kiss me until I take it off. We do the deed and go to sleep, and the next morning she starts asking me if I'm gay. And she's really serious and aggressive about it. I tell her I'm not, that if I was I'd definitely know if by now, and she counters with her major evidence of the fact that I own a shawl. Anyway, she gets weird and leaves, and then sends me a text later about how she's sorry and that she needs to think about what kind of man she wants, and then doesn't contact me for days. So yesterday I invite her out, she's stumbling over her words and talking about how she likes tough guys and how she grew up in the South and needs to get used to the big city, but that she doesn't know this or that, and eventually I just tell her very politely to get fucked because I'm pretty insulted by this point. On the way back, now that I'm not directly in front of her, I get this long apologetic text from her, but the crux of it is that yeah, she's just not that into me anymore because I wore a shawl. Later on, I tell Shawlbro about this, and he also had a blowout with the girl he was seeing over his shawl that very same night we went out. We are both going to keep wearing the shawls though, they are warm. Today I messed up by lying to my wife for 13 years. My wife hates orange and lime flavored candies. I love them. Well, love the orange, like the lime. So, she passes on the orange Starburst to me. She passes the orange and green Skittles to me. She passes the orange and green gummy bears to me. This has been happening for 13 years. What she doesn't know is that the green Haribo gummy bears are actually strawberry. Shortly after we married, for one reason or another, I looked at the back of the Haribo gummy bears package and discovered this. So I haven't said anything for 13 years. Every time we get gummy bears, she gives me the orange and green, strawberry. I've never said a word. I've enjoyed eating my little lies. Until last night. We had some gummy bears and she opened them and she started to hand me the orange and green ones. But after a few minutes, I saw her looking at the back of the bag. Then I saw her eyes get real big. She turned to me and asked if I've known that the green bears were strawberry. She always thought they were lime. I was honest and nodded my head yes. The look of betrayal was unreal. She asked how long I've known, and I was honest. I told her as long as we've been married. She quit giving me the gummy bears she didn't like. She was even eating the orange ones out of spite. I don't think I'll get any more gummy bear discards after this. Time to buy my own. Today I messed up. I have officially branded myself as the biggest perv, and I 100% deserve it. This is his now ex-wife. Did he not realize, or too dumb to remember we share everything, including the same Reddit app? I logged on to see this throwaway as the default login account. I've removed all of this personal story for my family's protection and changed this account's password. Although it might be too late and already circulated online. I took a look through the comments and was seriously disgusted by most of the responses suggesting to sexually approach both of us last night. Which my sister did mention he tried something in the middle of the night. This guy is incredibly living in another world. I'm only posting this to reassure everyone thinking he got away with it, that these types of scumbags do not. I came home yesterday with my sister to pack my shit. I saw his update saying I seemed alright, but I was keeping it in for the next morning. Reason we slept in the living room is because I didn't want him to see my bags in the corner of the bedroom. He came home suddenly before I finished packing. It wasn't fun camping or a picnic. This morning, before he woke up, we grabbed the rest of my stuff and left. I went to the bank and froze our joint account before he irresponsibly starts taking cash out. I'm not seeing him anymore, going to lawyer up, give away all this Reddit gold to the comments that I feel were actually reasonable, and divorce his ass. Oh, and if you can read this, I've deleted the tracking app. Winky face, my lawyer will call you to unfreeze your share and take the steps to unlink me from any other tracking apps you might have on me. Today I messed up by living in a dark bedroom for 6 years. The overhead fan in our bedroom uses one of those compact halogen light bulbs. 6 years ago the bulb burned out and got really dim, just barely a glow. I bought a replacement bulb, but when I put that one in it was also barely lighting up, so I realized the unit was bad. The fan still worked great. It literally is the best fan I've ever had because it moves a ton of air and is super quiet. The fan had also been a gift when we moved into our house. The unit cost over $400, so I didn't really want to replace it, even though our bedroom doesn't get much natural light, so it is pretty dark. So since then, over the years, my wife and I have had to make do with no overhead light. We open the windows during the day, and at night use a combination of bedside lamps and the bathroom light. It's never really as good of lighting as an overhead lamp, so I keep some flashlights up there for when we are cleaning or looking for something, etc. After 6 years of living in the dark, this winter I just decided I would replace the damn thing. But before I did, I decided to try one last time with another bulb because, however unlikely, it's possible both bulbs I had tried were bad. So I'm up there installing the new bulb, grab the remote, the fan has a remote, and as I'm turning the light on I realize the goddamn thing is dimmable. For 6 years we lived with the inconvenience of no overhead light, and the whole time it was just because the damn thing was set to dim. Today I messed up by telling my son's new doctor we are anti-vax. Obligatory. This happened several months ago. My son has autism, level 1, previously called Asperger's, and due to that he also has a psychiatrist, multiple psychologists and doctors. We decided to get a new primary doctor who works closely with his other providers to better coordinate his care this past summer. I brought my son in for a standard, well-child visit, and spent nearly an hour with this new doctor going over his issues, and medications, history etc. Toward the end of the visit she says to me, "Well, he can get the Gardasil vaccine today," to which I reply, "Oh, no, he can't have that, I don't want him to get autism." I should maybe note here that I am an Aspie too, and while I think my sarcasm is on point, I must have been a little too serious looking because she just stared at me. The silence lasted an eternity while I imagined she was deciding how to proceed. Eventually I laughed and tried to assure her I was only kidding, but she only returned a nervous-sounding chuckle and left the room. As my son and I were discussing whether I was offensive, he thought I was hilarious. In walked the nurse with a stack of information about vaccines. He started his lecture about vaccine safety and potential risks, etc., and no amount of my assurances that we are not in fact anti-vax would stop him. He just kept saying, "Okay, well I have to tell you this," in a way that suggested that the doctor told him to give me the full spiel. Today I messed up TIFU by taking a pregnancy test and ending up at the hospital. Technically this was not today, but recently. As a quick backstory, I, 24F, have been diagnosed with PCOS, and was told that I may still be able to have children but that it would be harder due to the irregular cycle I have. There are tests and medication the doctors have offered, but in this economy and the healthcare prices, I get so angry that I have to jump through all of these expensive hoops, so I have not continued the fertility testing/treatment process. To put it simply, I have been wanting children since the day I turned 18, and if all worked properly I would have. So I am pretty positive it will be a process for me to get pregnant, but until I can fully afford the testing, without having to put the rest of my life on pause, I just track my cycle and test periodically for ovulation and pregnancy. Basically, my period could come 2x a month or skip 7 months with no warning, and that is completely normal for me. Because of this, I never really think I'm pregnant, but if I haven't had my period in more than a month, I'll randomly take pregnancy tests when I think about it. These tests are never planned, I just always have tests in my bathroom. Anyway, to the day in question. My boyfriend, 29M, and I were running errands on a Saturday morning. We had been out and about from 10 to 2 p.m. and I didn't once stop to use a restroom. On the way home, I started needing to pee, and I was cool with waiting to get home. Once we got home, we had to take out the groceries away and take the dogs outside. Taking the dogs out took about 15 minutes since we live in an apartment. By the time we made it back inside I could barely hold it. I walked into the restroom and randomly thought of how I had not had my period in like 3 months and I could take a test right then. For a split second I debated but thought I would forget to take one if I didn't do it right then. So I start searching for my box of tests. I look under the sink. It's not there. I look in the cabinet behind the toilet. Nope. Finally I check in the closet, and I find it. I struggle to open the test and prep the test. This test is the small test strip type that you dip in the pee. I hope that makes sense. I'm opening the package and everything while barely holding onto my pee. Finally, I waddle over to the toilet and go to sit down. Instead of feeling the relief of releasing my batter, I felt the worst pain I've ever felt shoot through my entire back and hips, and because of the way I sat down, the pain didn't seem to want to go away until I got up. So the entire time I was peeing the pain was shooting through me to the point where I was bawling tears before I finished peeing. When I finished, I went to stand back up and couldn't fully due to the pain. I had to walk from the toilet to my bed bent over in horrible pain with my pants/underwear at my knees. When I got to the bed, I thought I would be fine and I could just lay down. Nope, I couldn't even get on the bed because I couldn't move my back without the pain getting worse. So I yelled to my boyfriend because all I could do was cry in pain with my chest laying on the bed while I was stuck bent over. He came running in to find me with my ass out, sobbing, saying unintelligible words. I finally tell him that my back hurts and I can't move, and he helps me climb onto the bed and lay down. However, the entire time I am just screaming through pain because no matter which way I moved, if I put any pressure on my lower back it made the pain worse. And since I was so worked up I was shaking and using more of my core, which just continued to make the pain worse. I started going into a full-blown panic/meltdown. I called my dad and he told me to go to urgent care if I needed to. I then called my best friend who had recently gone through similar back pain and had gone to have an MRI done. She gave me some tips on how to lay down to have the least pressure and hopefully calm the pain. Finally, after getting off the phone, I was still crying in pain. My boyfriend offered to call the ambulance and I said no because we live in America, BFR. Then he said he'd take me, but when I tried to get up to walk to the car I couldn't. I ended up laying there crying in pain for 2 hours, simply because I couldn't handle trying to walk because of how bad it hurt. Finally, after 2 hours, it has calmed enough for me to walk to the car, and into the hospital. I get checked out, which was a huge waste of time and money because by the time we left, all they had told me is I did not have a UTI, and I wasn't pregnant. They couldn't at all tell me why my back did that or if it would be a problem. They offered PT and sent me home. I later received bills totaling in about $2,000 out of pocket, $1,850 deductible, for almost nothing. After 2 days, the pain finally fully went away and luckily I have not had that happen again. However, it probably wouldn't have happened if I just left the pregnancy test alone. Today I messed up by giving a complete stranger $300. Now I know this is incredibly stupid and honestly I don't even know what I was thinking in that moment. I was done grocery shopping when an English man approached me looking distressed. He was there with his kid and told me he had lost his ID and wallet and desperately needed to catch a train to Paris for a flight. Usually I'm not a person who gets caught up in such stories. This time, however, I decided I'd do the right thing and help someone in need. He told me he needed $300 in cash and I went to withdrawal. He obviously told me he would transfer the money right away and I watched him do that. I gave my bank details and phone number and he gave me his number and some generic British name. I truly don't know what possessed me to do this. I've been studying 24/7 and honestly can't seem to make rational decisions outside. I've been trying to tell myself that he will give me the money but it's unlikely. I can't believe I didn't question him more. If he needed to catch a train, why wouldn't he purchase the ticket online? Why was he at a random grocery store and not near the train station? How would he travel without Y form of ID? Why approach me with this? Once I came home I thought more about it and called him. He told me it would come but afterwards I texted him and it was never delivered. Today I messed up my friendship. Is there a way back from this? I, 36M, have worked with a colleague, 40F, for the past 6 years. Even though she is married with children, we both mutually engaged in crossing of boundaries, sexting, flirting, physicality, but never sex. I'm not saying that any of this is okay, in fact I understand it is unhealthy for both of us. However, we both received something from the other. She felt desired when her husband wasn't engaging with her and I received validation that I desperately needed. I am in therapy and recognize wholly that my insecurity stems from rejection in childhood from my own mother and therefore I have an anxious attachment style. Despite this, we did over the 6 years develop a deep friendship that I thought of as core to me, talking and sharing every day. Recently another guy, married with kids, at work has begun hanging around. Previously my colleague, let's say Kim, did not like this individual. Described him as inappropriate, didn't like his work ethic, and felt he was narcissistic. He starts to come around and spend time with her, during the work day when he is off and she is working. Now there is legitimate reason that he be around some of the time, a stipend position, but it's a lot. I begin to notice and so do others. Another person asked if they had something going on. I said no and then told my female colleague what was said by others. Perception unfortunately can become reality. She thanked me but it seemed to create an issue, where the new male was upset that he was talked about by me. Frankly I was jealous of him being around and there was a specific correlation between he coming around and Kim speaking/confiding in me less. Basically, this has blown up because I let myself be controlled by my anxiety and insecurity, and I kept pestering my friend. To be fair, she did tell lies about different things, thinking she was sparing my feelings. She is avoidant attachment, so she really was exasperated by me, and I was basically pushing her away by expressing my emotions. I must have made a comment to someone somewhere about feeling uncomfortable when he comes around, and it got back to him, I think. But it's out of context, because it's not about him saying hi. After the third party made the comment, I was uncomfortable because we never cleared the air and I thought he was still mad. I'm dying inside. My friend wants nothing to do with me, and I'm not sure we'll ever go back to being friends and remain just colleagues. Today I messed up by inviting my allergic to water neighbor into a freshly cleaned pool. Years ago, when I was around 16, a bunch of us neighborhood kids would hang out at a house across the street that had a pool. We were all around the same age. I'm 27 now, and most of them are between 22 and 28. We basically grew up together. That house's pool was like a community treasure, but the deal was, if you wanted to swim, you had to help clean it. So one hot day, we all pitched in, scrubbing, rinsing, filling it up, until it was crystal clear and ready for a proper pool day. Except one guy didn't help, our neighbor who, since childhood, has had a complicated relationship with hygiene. Let's just say water was his natural enemy. The dude absolutely hated bathing. Every time we teased him about it, he'd swear he did shower, but his greasy hair and perpetual teenage funk always said otherwise. Anyway, we're all in the pool, having the time of our lives, when he shows up. We start cheering him on, begging him to join us. And surprisingly, he does. He strips down, steps in, and as soon as his body hits the water, something changes. I'm not even exaggerating, it was like his body released a protective coating. Grease started seeping out of his hair, shoulders, everywhere. But it wasn't just oily. It made the water around him look murky, almost like weirdly cloudy soup. You could see it spreading out around him. The entire group screamed and scrambled out of the pool like we were being attacked by a sea monster made of fryer grease. It was total chaos. To this day, that incident is one of our top inside jokes. He's still our friend, we love him a lot, and we remind him constantly about the time he single-handedly contaminated an entire pool with nothing but his natural aura. We even say the water didn't just turn greasy, it got emotionally damaged. Today I messed up by accidentally hiking a marathon. This is a comedy of errors. I dabble casually in hiking. I've had a couple backcountry trips in my younger years, but as of lately I'm pretty out of shape and working mostly an office job. In the past year or so, I've maybe done 5 to 6 hikes that a gal pal would drag me on. Maybe 5K, 10K max, but they felt Oklahoma. All this to say, that I probably have just enough experience, and little enough actual fitness, to be dangerous to myself. Visiting Banff this week, I knew I wanted to do a pretty significant, for me, hike, and cruised all trails for a good one. I found the Aylmer Lookout at Lake Minnewanka. All Trails says it's 23 kilometers, and an out-and-back hike. I figured, okay. A challenge, but I'll hike 12, take a break at the summit, and then hike 12 back out. Knowing this is the longest I'd ever attempted, I set a boundary for myself that if I hadn't reached the summit by 2:00 p.m., I would have to turn around and kiss that gratifying view goodbye for the sake of getting back to the car by sunset, and trying to be realistic about having to trek the same distance back out. Mistake number 1, not understanding that All Trails gives you the one-way distance of an out-and-back hike. I prepared myself well in the morning. Bear spray and bells, plenty of food and water, layers of clothing, sunscreen, emergency supplies, and my medications. This is one credit I will give myself, I did ensure that I had everything I needed for a big hike. I also had this handy-dandy new Garmin watch to help me track the hike, cool. This was mistake number 2, we'll get to that in a second. I set off. Hour 1 was delightful and flew by as I chatted with another family on the trail. They turned around at the first pretty bridge, and then I was on my own. Hours 2 to 3 were also lovely. I was marveling at the views, enjoying the fresh air, and generally vibing. My body felt great, even if I was feeling the burn. Oh sweet summer child. If only she knew. Hour 4 the ascent started, and I was feeling pretty pleased with myself. I figured since it was about noon that I was way ahead of schedule, and would certainly be at that majestic and coveted viewpoint well before 2 o'clock. I started listening to an audiobook, and channeled my inner badass female warrior as I started huffing and puffing my way up the mountain. This is where I started to crack. I severely underestimated how much harder it is to consistently hike up with no flat reprieves. Regardless, I persisted for 2 more hours. There were lots of breaks, and one very nearly puking moment I was able to stave off with some Gatorade, banana chips, and a gravel, thank goodness for my pocket pharmacy. This is also where I peed trail side for the first time. Despite my best diligence and efforts, I did indeed find a tick on my belly later that day. Yuck. All the while, I'm watching the numbers tick upwards on my Garmin. The km seem to be going by so slowly, but I chalk it up to being a chunky lady with little legs and elevation being harder and slower. I summit, take some photos, and head back down. Thank goodness downhill goes quicker than up. The rest, I'm thinking I was mostly in a fugue state. My phone was on low battery, so the audiobook had to stop in the interest of keeping the last of the battery for emergency and continuing to update my safety person on my locations. So I raw-dogged the long way home with just my thoughts. Thoughts like, you can do anything, even if you're slow. This will be a new personal record, and the hardest part is over. I also thought thoughts like, do I remember how to jerry-rig a tourniquet if a bear rips my arm off? Oh, did I not mention I was in grizzly territory? I didn't bring the bear spray just for funsies homies. The way home seemed impossibly slow. Why are the kms ticking by so slowly when I keep putting one foot in front of the other? I'm definitely going the right way, so I guess I'm just slower than I thought perhaps. I finally, blessedly, make it back to the car. 8:45 a.m. to 7:15 p.m. What a day. But I beat the sunset, and I had totally expected my legs to be jelly after 24 kilometers, so I'm calling it a win at this point. I get back to the hotel and a friend cheers for me, says I'm a crazy ass for doing a 24k hike. Proudly, I pull out the Garmin app to show her my stats. Miles. 24 miles. And with 1000 m of elevation to boot. For all y'all who aren't aware of the conversion, that's about 40 kilometers, quadruple the distance I had ever done in a day. Almost a literal motherfucking marathon. The combo of not understanding how all trails measures an out/back, and not looking closely at the units of measurement on that fancy new Garmin watch, means I accidentally did a marathon and I didn't even know it till it was done. So anywho, yeah. It's morning now and I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to walk on the plane. Today I messed up by attempting to ensure an employer was genuine and trying to hold them to their word. Throw away. I know I shouldn't have done this and it was a dumb idea, so spare the lectures of calling me a danger or a threat, though I could be wrong and overthinking, but honestly logically it doesn't make sense that what I did was wrong, but apparently I have committed an ultimate etiquette sin. Though I'm sure the anti-work sub would probably love this. I'm employed now as of a month ago, but this happened a bit before then during the time that I was for a little over 3 months, after parting ways with an incredibly toxic work situation which I won't get into. Part of the reason I was out of a job for that long was because I was being actually selective rather than frantic and desperate, even though we all know how basically nowadays you kinda have to game the job market and be wary of recruiters that get off on the bait and switch. But it's important to find something that's a good fit where I can see myself actually loving and looking forward to coming into. In the midst of this, one day I had an interview that seemed really promising. It was in person at the establishment itself, and before even coming in it piqued my interest because of how close it was in the nature of it. I know I said I was being selective, but some did stand out more than others which were more willing to settle for, and this was one of them. I come in, fashionably early, dressed to the nines and clean-shaven. The interviewer was very sweet and down-to-earth. The team environment and morale seemed great, the job itself felt like something I could look forward to, and best of all, the commute was a very close straight shot. I made my interest clear, showed a lot of positive energy, and of course asked all the questions that I needed to without trying to seem negative, despite my experience at my previous job. These were all basic important questions like benefits, work-life balance and time-off policy, something that was a huge problem at my previous job, but I didn't really outright say that, pay, all that important stuff. Honestly, it felt a lot more like a conversation than an interview, which was good for me, though I don't know if that's a sign of anything or a green or red flag or whatever. When I mentioned work-life balance, she actually emphasized how much value they place on work-life balance, which was music to my ears. She actually went off on a bit of a tangent herself about corporate America, and how they're not like them, as well as how she doesn't like when workplaces say, "We're a family," also music to my ears. Like I said, I personally was trying to avoid seeming negative myself, but I clearly lit up when she brought up both those things. Not sure if it was an attempt to try to connect or relate, or to bait/test/trap me, but I didn't think much of it. I gave in to appreciating it and giving her the benefit of doubt. I guess my positive energy wasn't good enough for them because a few days later I got an email saying that I didn't make the cut, with the cliché wishing me good luck and how, "We'll definitely let you know the next time something opens up," and a whole, "Don't settle. Go for something you actually want." Yes, in all caps, probably an attempt to seem more personable to make it clear it's a person writing and not an automated email. Great. Now here's where I did wrong, if you could call it that. I highly doubt my actions made any difference whatsoever. So I've heard plenty of times employers saying, "We'll reach out if we have any more openings," and I've never once seen any of them actually reach out, which is demoralizing. Now, since this person seemed to do a good job going out of her way to make herself seem genuine, part of me did actually give the benefit of doubt that either they might be for real, or at the very least they might be able to relate in how a message like that might be received, especially with her initiating the rant about family, and about corporate America. So, I decided to write a very carefully phrased email. Remaining completely respectful at all times, not aggressive or accusatory in any way. But basically my idea was to inquire about whether they actually have any intention of contacting me, and addressing the things that they said in hope that they might be able to relate in some way on how companies often like to demoralizingly do that, and once again expressing my interest and emphasizing how it stood out to me. I kind of figured their mind was already made up, but I feel like if I hadn't sent it I would have wondered, what if? Plus, if it's already made up, nothing to lose, right? Well, of course, who am I kidding? It wasn't well received at all. Got a response back saying they didn't like the email and weren't gonna reach out. Probably never were going to begin with, but I got them to admit it at least. They probably want me to think the email changed their mind, but we all know the odds of that. Oh well, their loss. Today I messed up by overstaying my welcome at my girlfriend's apartment. So I, 27M, have been dating my girlfriend, 26F, for about 3 months. Things have accelerated very quickly, and we've spent less than 10 nights apart from each other since we met. My AC is not keeping up with the Florida summer, and even though I've had an AC repair guy out 3 times, it's still about 80 to 85 degrees in my upstairs room all the time. My landlord doesn't want to replace it, and she's charging me about 50% less than she could for rent, so I haven't pushed her. She's not some big landlord, this is just her old townhouse and is her one and only rental property. Anyways, I've been sleeping at my girlfriend's apartment a lot. She has 2 roommates, and today, one of her roommates was asking about my AC. I asked her if she was uncomfortable with me being here. Apparently, both her and the other roommate have sexual trauma, and having a man randomly in their apartment all the time and in the middle of the night, has not done their mental health any favors. I feel terrible, and I sincerely apologized. One night we told her roommates we were staying at my place, but it was 85 in my room, so we came back. I went down to get water in the middle of the night, and she just saw a man standing in her kitchen after having fallen asleep on the couch. I scared the shit out of her, but I didn't realize it. Luckily, I can hear my girlfriend very calmly and cordially talking to her roommate downstairs. Today I messed up by walking past sex workers with my friend. My friend visited me recently. He's from a small town and it was his first time in the city. I joked that I would show him where all the sex workers were because he's never had a GF. I was referring to a street in the center of the city that was known for having a lot of sex workers parading on the sidewalk. My friend took my joke seriously and made me promise to take him to the sidewalk of pimps and pros as soon as possible. Long story short, we were walking down that specific sidewalk yesterday. I was low-key looking forward to seeing my friend, who basically had zero experience with women, awkwardly respond to random women approaching him for sex. I thought I was gonna end up laughing at my friend getting flustered. I thought I was gonna get a front row seat to watch my friend go through what most people, including me, go through when they walk past a dozen dirty talking sex workers competing for attention. However, it quickly became clear to me that I was the only one getting all of the attention from the sex workers, whereas my friend was getting no attention at all. On one hand, I had sex workers calling me daddy and bombarding me with offers, and on the other hand, I had my friend laughing at me. Out of confusion, I decided to ask one of the sex workers why only me and not my friend. The sex worker said the following in a foreign accent: "Friend, pretty boy, you pay." At that moment I realized the sex workers assumed my friend was most likely having more than enough sex for free because of how attractive he was, whereas I, the hideous one apparently, probably had to pay up if I wanted someone to sleep with me. I laughed because my fucking friend was laughing hysterically, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel ugly as fuck. I'm gonna avoid that sidewalk forever from now on. My friend can go alone next time. He's probably hot enough to get freebies from sex workers. Today I messed up TIFU by masturbating in front of the nurses in the hospital while waking up from anesthetic. I am definitely going to delete this later. I'm posting this under my Anon account for a reason. I'm just hoping that maybe there are some other people here who've done something similar, or nurses that can tell me worse stories from their work to make me feel better about myself. Or at least maybe a little mockery will help turn this from a humiliating story to a funny one. Today I had an egg retrieval operation in the hospital as part of an egg donation. This is a surgical procedure in which a needle is inserted into the vaginal wall to the ovary, collecting mature eggs to be fertilized. While normally you only have one, injections are administered for about 2 weeks beforehand to increase the number of eggs matured in one cycle. In my case there were about 25 eggs. The retrieval is done under anesthetic, which I'm going to blame for all my poor decisions. Everything was going swimmingly until I woke up. For about 10 minutes I was totally fine. Then I felt like absolute shit. I've done this once before but it didn't hurt this bad. It felt like period pain, if you were having 25 particularly bad periods all at once. The cramps were so bad one of the first things I did once it hit was roll over and throw up, though that could have actually been the nausea from the anesthetic, I am not sure. There was an 4 in my left arm, so I didn't want to curl up on my left on top of it, and I tried to curl up on my right, but that left my left arm in very uncomfortable position too, so I opted to roll into the fetal position while lying on my back, that is, with my knees lifted in the air up against my chest and my calves and feet hovering parallel to the bed. This did help with the pain a little. What I realized later when recreating this position at home later is it's very difficult to get the blanket to actually cover your backside entirely like this, and the hospital blankets were not that big, so I'm reasonably sure that in trying to alleviate my pain I was also displaying my ass and genitals to all of the attending staff, 3 nurses, and possibly others in the recovery room as well. One of the nurses went to fetch some kind of opioid to help with the pain. While that was happening, I was acutely aware of the intense ache in my vulva and pelvis. For the men in the subreddit who are not in the know, masturbating helps with period pain, and I was still reasonably sure that the blanket was covering me entirely and nobody would know. So in my delirious state I decided to rub the offending anatomy to try and reduce the pain. One of the nurses closed the curtain surrounding me and then he told me he was going to get me a second blanket, for warmth. When he returned with it he placed it a little lower over my body, covering my lower body and legs. I didn't really put what this meant together until later. To their credit, they took it very well and didn't actually say anything, and it is possible they didn't see it, but reflecting on their reactions and the chain of events in clear-eyed hindsight I'm pretty sure they did. To be fair, if any of them were present for the surgical procedure they would have seen me while I was unconscious as well, but it's a different thing when I'm awake and, well, you know. Anyway, now I'm recovering in bed at home. The pain has went away but the embarrassment has only increased. At least I humiliated myself for a good cause, and I'll probably never see these people again. Today I messed up by visiting a Japanese bathhouse. Okay, so this happened a fair few years ago but still haunts me. Back in 2017 I was in my final year of university, and got the opportunity to spend 5 weeks in Tokyo for an exchange/observership. One of the items on my bucket list was to visit a sento, traditional indoor Japanese bathhouse. I wanted to go to somewhere a bit less touristy, and luckily there was a place only a few blocks from where I was staying, like 45 minutes out of the central city. Not wanting to make an idiot of myself, I did some research beforehand regarding what to expect and how to act. One thing mentioned was that you have to wash yourself before you hop in the pool. I didn't have a travel bottle of soap/body wash but read that you can buy it at most places, and if not then it will often be supplied. When I got there I quickly realized no one spoke English, and although I managed to pay for my entry, I couldn't communicate re soap nor could I see any for purchase behind the counter. I assumed there would be some in the actual bathing area so stripped down naked in the changing room, put my clothes in a locker, and proceeded into the actual bathing room. On the left-hand side of the room were like 15 or so washing stations, to the right was the big pool. There were a few old men sitting, well more like squatting, on tiny footstool things washing themselves. I was the only non-Japanese person there, and alas there was no soap in sight. Then I spied just to the left of the entrance, on a table, a small woven basket with like 7 bars of soap in it. This was where I made my big fuck up. I assumed that this was the communal soap basket. I grabbed a bar of soap and walked over to one of the washing stations to get to business. One of the old Japanese guys saw me doing this, and started glaring at me and muttering something under his breath. This would have been the time to return the soap to the basket and call it a day, but I'm a fucking idiot so that didn't happen. Shortly after, another old Japanese man gets out of the bath, walks over to the table, picks up the basket of soap, exchanges words with the guy who glared at me, and proceeds to also start glaring at me and saying something in what seemed to be a pretty angry tone. This is when I realize with horror that the basket was in fact his, and I had just stolen one of his bars of soap. By this point I had already lathered myself up however, so handing the soap back to him clearly wasn't an option. I awkwardly tried to apologize but could see it wasn't well received. I didn't see any other option except to finish washing myself, but the next issue was that I had nowhere to put the soap. I didn't have a toiletries bag with me, and there were no rubbish bins anywhere. So I just sat there, red-faced, completely naked, dying a million deaths inside, continuously rubbing soap on myself and breaking it up/disintegrating it into small enough chunks that it would go down the drain. I'm sure the Japanese men continued glaring and cursing at me, but I didn't make any further eye contact with them so can't be completely sure. After this ordeal was over, I rinsed myself off, got up and entered the bath. The water was incredibly hot however, and this alongside the shame and embarrassment washing over me, made for a thoroughly unenjoyable experience. I only stayed in there for like 5 minutes before slinking out, back to the safety of my touristy accommodation. Today I messed up by greenlighting a NSFW gift to my husband from his mom. This foo happened a few Christmases ago, but the fallout finally hit this year. My MIL likes to get themed family gifts every year. Matching PJs, matching lap desks for the couch, etc. A few years ago, she texted the group chat, which my husband refuses to open or check, that she was buying everyone a personalized couch pillow. The kind that hugs you, and has pockets for remote/phone/etc. She sent the options she thought my husband and I would like and asked us to choose. They were tiny thumbnail pictures, but I did my best. My husband loves anime, so when she suggested the anime one for him, I said absolutely, without looking closely at the pillow. Christmas Day arrived, we open our pillows, and my husband goes silent. He mumbles, "Thank you," and takes the pillow straight to our bedroom. When we watched movies later, Mil asked why he wasn't using his pillow. He babbled a bit about not wanting the dogs to get fur on it, and changed the subject. That night when we went to bed, he showed me the pillow and said, "Look at the character. What do you see? A happy anime girl?" I replied cautiously. "No babe. It's a hentai girl. That's a pillow covered in O faces." Now I'm no internet noob, I know what hentai is. But I didn't catch it at all. In my shame, we never told Mil why the pillow stayed in the bedroom, and left it at dog fur. This Christmas, it all came out. Mil expressed her sadness that my husband didn't like his pillow, because she never saw him using it. For some reason, he blurted out that he loved it, but it wasn't appropriate to use during family time. We had to explain the whole story. My very religious Mil looked like she swallowed nails. And now she knows she got her son a porn pillow, and I told her to do it. Today I messed up by staring at a client during a couple's massage. I'm a registered massage therapist, RMT. Often during treatments, especially when using Swedish techniques, I tend to visually zone out. I find it easier to focus on what I'm doing with my eyes closed to just staring into space. Just work by feel, you know? Today another RMT and myself were booked for a couple's massage. My client was female and my coworker had her male partner. Now, today I'm more tired than usual. It was a very gusty night and the wind howling kept waking me up. So as I'm working in the warm, quiet and dimly lit room, anytime I close my eyes I can feel my body wanting to doze off. In these types of situations, a couple coworkers and myself will start doing facial exercises to try and keep ourselves awake without disturbing the client or taking away from their experience. Think like, super wide eyes, clenching and unclenching jaw, furrowing and unfurrowing brows, puffing up cheeks and sucking them in, etc. It's weird, and it looks weird, but it does help and usually no one knows unless there's another RMT in the room. So I'm making these weird faces to try and keep myself awake and on task, and the appointment is going as normal. The other RMT has their client turn, puts their eye mask on, I have my client turn over and give them an eye mask and THR and I continue my face exercises. At some point, I'm away in my head somewhere while working away and not paying attention to what I'm actually staring at while continuing to make these stupid dumb faces, when suddenly I zone back in and notice my coworker's client staring back at me with a very disturbed expression. My coworker had removed their eye mask because it kept sliding off, and I hadn't noticed. I had been seemingly intently staring at this poor guy, making bizarre faces for at least several minutes at this point. He didn't say anything, so I swiftly broke eye contact and tried to avoid looking his way again for the rest of the session. I basically ran from the room after the appointment ended. Just feeling mortified by this. And if that client happens to stumble upon this, I'm sorry for making it weird. Thanks for not complaining about my weird staring. Today I messed up by seducing my wife after watching a documentary. Sunday morning. Shitty weather outside. As the benevolent and gracious husband I am, I let my wife sleep in and got up early with the kids. A while later, after watching about 1 million episodes of Paw Patrol, for the millionth time, I convinced the kids that we should switch it up and learn something. So on goes the nature documentary, and we're all excited to watch grizzlies eating salmon, lions ambushing wildebeest and so on. Good times. But therein lies the problem. These animals were having a really good time, aside from the ones that were eaten, presumably, unless they're exceptionally kinky. They were fing all over the place, and Sir Dave Attenborough's calm and clear voiceover really put the mood on it. So after watching a bunch of salmon getting busy and some really horny lions going at it like 20 times in a row, the dude lion lasts almost as short as me, I could sense certain urges brewing in my nether regions. Now to be clear, it's not like I wanted to F the animals. I wasn't sitting there seeing some grim-faced salmon inseminating an entire lake of salmon ladies and wishing I could be there to F them. I don't find fish sexy. I'm not a dolphin. But seeing these animals fulfilling their life's purpose with such determination and vigor really resonated. It wasn't just me, the kids were engrossed too. But not for the same reason, I hope. Channeling my inner alpha beast overflowing with urges, I did the only logical thing. I tiptoed to the bedroom and carefully opened the door to investigate whether there was any hope of initiating mating rituals. Loud snoring and the occasional fart indicated this was not currently on the agenda of my wife. But if the salmon can stop eating for like 8 weeks, struggle up endless waterfalls just to get a chance at sexing, and then die immediately after, I should be able to wait for 20 minutes. At least I'd give it a try. So I went back to the living room just in time to see some jungle monkeys having a gangbang, going at it from all sorts of angles and positions. It was like a hyper-athletic swingers club. It sent my libido into hyperdrive. 8 minutes later, after what seemed like an eternity, my wife appeared. No time to waste, so to romance her I described in detail how all the kids were fed and the kitchen had been meticulously cleaned. I had put away the dishes and wiped the countertop. I could tell by her acknowledging grunts my seduction was working. I poured her a cup of coffee, handed it over with an awkward, lower body dominant hug. I'm also somewhat of a contortionist, at which point she uttered her first words, of the day, not her life. She is an adult, I need some hot cream. I was ready to explode. In hindsight I think she probably meant cream for her coffee, but my brain had already stopped listening at that point so I can't be sure. Anyway, I executed the final steps of my master plan. Grabbed her hand in an assertive manner. Proclaimed we were going to the bedroom with immediate effect. Feebly awaited her approval on step number 2, she nodded in agreement. Announced to the kids that they could watch whatever they wanted as long as they didn't move out of the living room. Marched to the bedroom with tremendous haste. We got to the place where magic occasionally happens. At this point we're both relatively aroused. I was about to go supernova and she was awake, so on average I'd say we were pretty horny, and she inquired with tempered excitement what was the source of my exuberance. This is where the mess up happened. Now I could have said a lot of different things which would have probably worked in my favor. For example, I could have said, "You're so beautiful I can't think straight," or "I spent the morning with our beautiful family and just love you so much," or simply, "I'm horny." I'm pretty sure all of those would seal the deal. But I was in action mode and unfortunately my brain was suffering from limited resource allocation, so I blurted out, "I saw the monkey getting fed and it made me think of you." She seemed puzzled, so I doubled down with, "I want F like monkey do," in an uncharacteristic, caveman-style manner. She was not amused. Mission was aborted, and I had to resort to plan B, which, for the record, did not involve any animals other than a snake in a chokehold.